Yeah, sure. So ultimately, a lot of this, repursing that we just talked about, yeah, I think ultimately the goal is to herd people into manufacturing consent for some sort of digital ID system, with the goal of having that system being connected to all of your internet access through your internet service provider or ISP, and also to your social media account, with the goal of really having you have a formal government ID linked profile of everything you read and consume online, as a way to get around repersoning and the bot issue and all of these things. So who's behind this larger agenda? Well, it's not just one person. It's not just two people. It's a lot bigger than that. All of these global policy agendas that are somehow being implemented in lockstep globally obviously have a transnational group behind them. I think that's quite clear. And there's no shortage of cheerleaders for that agenda in the United States, whether it's team left or team right. And the same is true elsewhere. It's just really the sales pitches to get people to adopt them are different. So, on the right, it's being framed as a way to stop illegal immigration. On the left, it's being framed as a way to stop hate speech and stop cyberbullying online and protect children and all sorts of things like that, really just looking for whatever metric sticks with whatever demographic they want to placate ultimately. So there's several groups that are behind it. A lot of it ultimately goes back, if you look at, some of these entities that sort of first kickstart the digital ID push under the auspices of the United Nations, like the ID 2020 Alliance, which has now been folded into another alliance with essentially all of the same funders. But ultimately, ID 2020 was started by, groups like Microsoft, the Rockefeller Foundation, Accenture, some of these big multinational corporations, or in the case of the Rockefeller Foundation, the philanthropic arms of oligarchic clans that have tried to create a global system of financial control in private hands for the better part of the last 100 years. And so ultimately, digital ID is meant to sort of facilitate that kind of system globally. But I don't think it's likely that they're going to sell it as one universal digital ID for everybody. They want it to be vendor agnostic, but have it all have sort of similar standards and have the data all be exportable in the same format. So, maybe you'll have, in the US, for example, 5 or 6 or even 10 different vendors of digital ID. And Japan will have 5 to 10 and what have you. But ultimately, all of that data, whether the US, Japan, or anywhere else in the world, can all be exported in the same format to the same centralized database, which is ultimately the goal, right? And then technically you do have a centralized system of digital ID, but it looks to be decentralized at the superficial layer. And that is also the goal too with the digital currency push, and because it's not just central bank digital currencies, there's also the issue of private bank digital currencies, which are also just as surveillable and seizable and programmable as CBDCs would be. They're just in the hands of private banks. And do you think JP Morgan would behave any better than the Federal Reserve when JP Morgan is one of the biggest, controllers of the Federal Reserve? I mean, honestly, it's kind of a false dichotomy at the end of the day. You can get that kind of, liberty killing money from either the private or the public sector. And what will likely happen is a public-private partnership, the preferred model of all of these groups, UN included. And so I think ultimately that's where this is going to lead us. And they want it to obviously be connected to your online activity. So if you want to use the internet for economic activity, for social activity, or education, or anything else, you will have to have a digital ID and connect it to your ability to get online. And then obviously there's a push to have turn basically social media giants into banks. There's a big push for this with X, Twitter, and presumably, it was Facebook originally that tried to start the stablecoin Libra Diem project that has since, been turned into, after it was shut down, went to populate USDC, and some of these companies that are working on the Lightning Network on Bitcoin, like David Marcus's Lightspark and some of those things. So there's efforts to revive that and ultimately kind of link it to some sort of gig economy, I guess you could say, based on how much of people's attention you can get on these social media platforms, and what your metrics are in terms of likes and clicks. But are you even dealing with real people? Are you even they'll presumably you would be, right, if everyone has an ID, but that's not necessarily true when you consider that a lot of governments are the people running the bots right now. It's pretty much an admitted thing that militaries around the world own and control bot farms. They use them for narrative management. In the case of the U.S. military, the Air Force specifically started researching how to use social media to control people like drones. That's literally what they say. In 2014,